The dreams of peace hidden by the sound of the bullets. Was the Great War unavoidable? Industrial capitalism encouraged people or nations the need to have more and more resources from the colonies. This led to rivalry among European nations, which eventually opened the space for the war. The Great War was unavoidable due to the economic system of the 20th century, which was industrial capitalism. By 1930, European nations were dividing and invading all Africa territory in order of getting more resources for improving their capital and industrialization. In this order of ideas, the countries with more colonies were the ones with more power, because colonies brought raw materials that were a direct source of capital. United Kingdom had 33% of African territories, and France possessed 36% of the mentioned continent. Meanwhile, Germany had just only 8% of the territory. From these statistics, we can infer the following. Great Britain and France were the countries with more colonies in Africa. Thanks to that, they had more capital for industrialization, and therefore they were the most powerful countries at the beginning of the 20th century. Germany was really upset because he wanted capital due to the fact that he was aware that with more capital, more power the country will have. So, United Kingdom and France were not going to give away their colonies, and Germany won't say no to the idea of having more resources for its industrialization. Thanks that European nations were so radical with their position and interests, there was no other option than going to war. As we just established, the main character of the war was Germany. For this reason, it should be noted the purposes of their leaders. German Kaiser Wilhelm II in 1930 stated the following: "His responsibility of looking after the people and the nation was conferred by God, and his duty was to increase the nation's heritage as it was established in the Bible, and whoever interfered in his task, it must be crushed." For this argument, we are going to take into account the following variables. The first one is the way in which the leaders were committed with their purposes and the will of power established by need. Let's suppose that we are the German Kaiser at the beginning of the 20th century. I saw that my participation at the scandal of Africa was really few for my demands. Actually, it was even null. So I start wondering, what am I going to do? Right after that moment is where both variables take place. I must start making actions, because I won't stand seeing Britain and France getting richer, leaving me beside. I will obtain my demands no matter how, or future consequence from my acts. The only thing that I care of is being loyal with my nation and to my engagement with God. In that order of ideas, thanks that Britain and France were not supporting me for achieving my task, I think them as my enemies, and I give them the treat an enemy should receive, and that treatment is no other than war. At the beginning of 2013, we saw the United States of America want to intervene militarily in Syria due to the fact that Syria was using chemical weapons and this affected United States security. These actions were immediately stopped and criticized by the United Nations because they were against the UN principles, which are the following: maintaining peace and security, and to that end, take measures for the prevention and removal of threats to peace, and for the suppression of acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace. So, as United States is involved in the UN, it must follow what this organization states. For developing our argument, we're going to make an analysis between the situation just mentioned and what was happening at the beginning of the 20th century. In both cases, United States, Germany, France, and UK had in mind taking military actions against the nations they considered their rivals. The main difference relies on the fact that, in the early 20s, no one said no to these actions, while nowadays there are international organizations, such as the UN, that have the power of denying their military attempts and promoting peaceful solutions among nations. In other words, thanks to the lack of international organizations, such as the UN at the beginning of the 20th century, the war was still a solution for issues between countries.
For ending our project, I'm going to suppose I'm the Kaiser of Germany in 1913, Wilhelm II. Britain and France did not give me the opportunity for gaining power, but I must do something because I have a commitment with God and with German society. and thanks that there is no one suggesting me a peaceful alternative, the only solution I contemplate is war.
Below us, above us, only sky.